received news that they'd received some grant funding. So it was very good, and they were able to outline to us, and the committee questioned them and spoke about how that's going to be implemented, and if there's any capacity for us to assist, and they sort of indicated potentially there is. So look, it was mostly to inform the council and councillors, I guess, as people holding public office. We also have a role out in the community to promote organisations and events where appropriate to do so, and I guess in implementing this grant to be effective, they need to actually then get people up and using it. I was very pleased to then note that I believe the CEO went and met with Tennis last Wednesday, if memory serves. CEO's looking at me funny, maybe it wasn't, but but look, if you read the officer's response, from my point of view, it's very pleasing, but mostly this was a motion brought to inform you as council, to sort of close that loop, because we obviously heard from the Domain Tennis Centre, and I guess just to note the opportunity that the City of Hobart now has to help activate this grant, and I guess in some ways congratulate them on being receivers of it. And look, so it's a bit of a good news story. It very much aligns with the goals of the Healthy Hobart Committee and the group, and ultimately, by implementing those grants and the facility improvements up there, it provides a new opportunity for people in Hobart to be more active, more fit, more engaged. And so look, I would commend the motion to the council.
Councillor Kitsos.
I've got a question for Councillor Coates through you, Chair.
Yes.
Could you please provide some further definition of activate, when you say activate these grants, what you might be meaning around that?
So yes, so the grants primarily relate to grants for physical infrastructure. So it is a huge increase in capacity they've got there. So I think it was 18 or 16 courts they've got at the moment. There's going to be another 6 pickleball courts. For those that aren't aware, pickleball is a racket sport that's really growing in popularity, but it has a much lower threshold for being able to sort of learn and participate, and so it's seeing huge growth amongst particularly elderly population. And so from an activation point of view, yes, you can sort of build the facilities, and there's some people say we'll build them and they'll come, but there is a capacity to activate in terms of, well, okay, yes, there's this ability now to play pickleball up there, or the new clay courts up there, or to participate in when they do the open days, so come and try. The committee did question, what are the barriers for people to be able to play, so that, I know I'm going into a little bit more speech now, but activation means not just create the infrastructure, but then promote the usage of the infrastructure and the uptake. So, yeah.
Seek a supplementary question through you, to you, Councillor Coates. Does your, if we were to support item 5, do you envisage that's basically endorsing the proposal to give about $12,000 of additional in-kind support, as suggested in the Council Officer's report?
Look, so to give a little bit of a, to answer your question fully, just a slight little bit of context. When I wrote the motion, my understanding is that, and if you read the officer's response, the officers then went and spoke to them, and they said, oh, actually really help us if you could help with the DA side of things and then that thing. When I wrote the motion, the activation was, and in the efforts to promote those grants was, I guess, help where we can. If that's a way we can help, great, but it was more about promoting and helping grow this, we've got obviously social media channels, we've got us. Part of the reason for bringing it to this chamber is the 12 of us are out and about. So look, when I was writing the motion, number 5 was sort of speaking to that. My understanding is that the officers, and in their response, they talk about talking to the main centre, and I guess talking through, well, great, you've got this money for the infrastructure, but how is that, how can we help with that? And obviously there's a DA process involved. I didn't think there would be a DA. I guess you build a court, you have to have a development application for that. But yeah, so look, I guess in supporting this motion, I'm not sort of directing how council supports. I think council officers can do that work and engagement and get behind the club. But as I said, by bringing it to council, it sort of closes the loop from the work the committee did. It enables all of you to hopefully become advocates as well, and where we can and where it's appropriate. I think we can. Officers, the financial implications 1 and 2, to response from officers. I wasn't specifically requesting that. I'm in the CEO may wish to speak a bit more about the officer's response to the report, but look, yeah, that wasn't something that was in my motion per se.
Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, the way I read this, it's can the council help promote some of the activities at the tennis club, the main tennis centre? And I'm happy to support this because I think it's a good sport, and especially adding pickleball. And I heard Alderman Zuko make a noise when pickleball came up because I think he gets it, that it's a really popular sport.
Huge.
And growing in popularity.
Huge.
And I know from the Moona Sports Centre, they haven't got enough capacity there. They've got people waiting to play pickleball. They're playing competitions during the week now, during the day, not after hours. So pickleball is hugely popular, growing in popularity. It's a sport that everyone can play, and I can't wait till I get old, and I'll be playing it as well. But in the meantime, we played a game similar back in the 60s, which was called, not pickleball, paddles and all that. So I think I'd be a natural. But anyway, haven't played it yet, look forward to it. And I'm fully supportive of this engagement thing where we can actually encourage people to go and have a go without any cost to council.
Councillor Kitsos.
Look, just to echo the sentiments of Councillor Harvey, that I fully support this partnership. It's a Healthy Hobart suitable initiative. It reflects all my values in terms of building community and a healthy community and preventing cardiovascular disease and stroke through more physical activity and movement. So I'd really like to support this. I feel hesitant in supporting the motion if it is tied to specific funding, given that we couldn't agree to increase the budget tonight for services for the homeless. However, if it's in-kind contribution and a partnership to engage and activate, I would support the motion.
I just wanted to assist
Councillor
Harvey on a few years ago about what it was. That's how pickleball came into play. That's why they named it pickleball. Because a few years ago, you and I used to be pickled.
When we were 7.
Trying to play handball. And that's why they call it pickleball.
Handball's against the wall.
Okay, all right. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. How wonderful it is, Councillor Coates, that your motion has created and generated so much happiness around the table.
Healthy Hobart.
Mediation, conciliation, we just go talk about pickleball.
But I'm killing it because I'm eating these chocolates.
No, thank you very much for bringing forward this motion. I'm delighted that it's here today. I did just want to, I do also appreciate the question and the commentary from Councillor Kitsos as well, because that would have been a concern for me as well. But I do commend this motion, and I just wanted to read, which I think was really important, from the notes and the minutes of Councillor Coates's meeting, the Healthy Hobart meeting. It goes on to talk about various different things, but Ed, who is the manager of the Domain Centre, he actually talked about how members were surprised with the overall increase in revenue at 160% since 2020. The members wanted to, I think it is Councillor Coates's committee, they asked about, they wanted to know how much promotion there was, and the manager actually responded that there's been an increase in the email list from 700 to 3,000. That's amazing. Since he was actually appointed manager. And then the notes in the portfolio meeting go on to talk about other various different things. And I think this was a really wonderful question that Councillor Coates asked. Councillor Coates asked Ed, what is the one thing you would change? Ed values promotion. The changes to club with tenants, food and beverage make the club more attractive to a variety of visitors. He also asked, Councillor Coates also asked where he would see the club in 10 years, and he responded, the club will be seen as the central hub where everyone visits as a place to play. And I think that's wonderful. So I commend this motion, and thank you very much, Councillor Coates, for bringing it.
Further discussion? Would you like to sum up, Councillor Coates?
Sure. Look, in reading the administrative response, as was noted, I think they've identified potentially some implications if they were to go down that path, but just before everyone sort of votes on, I guess I'd note that the strict wording in a motion is that we enable council to get behind them. It doesn't necessarily dictate how. And so, look, I think this is a good news story. But, yeah, just you know, in your own networks as public figures, as public office holders, you know, if we can do what we can to support community clubs, it sort of helps that whole ecosystem. So part of me bringing this to you is to inform you of that, and I hope that is helpful. So, look, thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 25 is the Collins Street Clearway motion from Councillor Elliott and Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kelly.
Outlined, Lord Mayor, in the note.
Seconded by Alderman Zuko.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. As we all know, there's the proposal for the dual bike lane in Collins Street with removal of the 59 car spaces proposed for bikes and scooters. And it's to be there for a 2-year trial, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Big change to the streetscape and operation of Collins Street, and this will result in major changes. It's going to have a major impact on not only the traders but also with the car movements and the flow of it, bus services, delivery trucks, the elderly, disabled parking, to name a few of the stakeholders. So, as we were talking about earlier, we need to look at all the possible options, hence this motion. It's not a poke the bear motion, it's saying, hey, I haven't seen anything about this, it's never been mentioned, let's have a look at it. So the possible, to look at all the options, which are based on thorough consultancy with all the stakeholders and detailed and accurate evidence, and then provide the elected members with the evidence-based recommendations, which brings me to the option of the clearway. There's nothing new about clearways, as we know. In recent years, they've increased and have become a proven way of making traffic movement more efficient. It's simple. Spaces on the road should be used to their maximum efficiency, whether it's for a loading zone, car parking space, disabled, traffic movement lane, or a pedestrian crossing. Therefore, it's all about sharing a resource to achieve its maximum possible use fairly and efficiently for all stakeholders. A bicycle clearway, based on the same operation as a parking clearway, is currently used in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia. This motion is not about saying no to bicycle lanes, but it is saying that we need to, 1, consult thoroughly with all our stakeholders, and 2, provide elected members with baseline data, in particular actual statistics that show on a daily and hourly basis what the actual numbers of cyclists and scooter users are. Design needs data. In the absence of any real data or statistics that I'm aware of, and I and other elected members have done our own research, and the numbers are now in. These can and will be supplied, and the actual vision is also available to view. It's nothing technical, it's pure vision. The scooter users and bicyclists, we're saying could use this space in the major times that we need it. And we called, support that for the use of a shared Collins Street use is for all stakeholders. Look, I'm going to leave it there. It's up to Councillor Elliott too, who's co-authored this motion. She's just going to expand on some of that there. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So this motion came about obviously because several of us do have significant amount of nervousness about what's proposed for Collins Street. And we basically took 2 actions, one of it being Alderman Zuko and myself and Alderman Bloomfield and Councillor Kelly both walked the street pretty much 3.5, 4 blocks of Collins Street and spoke to dozens of businesses, and our suspicions were confirmed in that a lot of the businesses have serious concerns about the impact of the changes on their business. The next thing we started to look at is, okay, what data sources do we have given this massive change that's ahead of us? And we I acknowledge that we have information from the Bike Network, from Cycling South, from a counter on the Rivulet that I understand has been broken for a few years. And then there's the big sources that everyone uses around the sensors and things like that. But just before I go a bit further, I just wanted to ask, through you, Chair, to the relevant directors or officers, what data do we have that specifically talks about the volume, the current volume of bike riders and e-scooters on Collins Street? Yes, that's a question.
Mr Vidal.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, so I think you've noted the key ones. So they are the bike census that's taken annually. We've got a counter on the Rivulet, near the exit of the Rivulet, just near the cafe there. We've also have some data from the Viva City count that we did as part of the installation of the Mole Collins Street signals. That gave us some count data as well. And then we've got the gross data sources like census, the Greater Hobart Travel Demand Survey, which talks to some of those sort of higher end movements. They're the main sort of five types, yes. And
just to confirm I'm correct, do you have any data that's further deeper into Collins Street? Because from my understanding is pretty much all of that, other than the census, relates to the intersection of Mole and Collins. Do you have anything further into Collins Street?
We don't, as of yet, no, not in the same level of detail as we've described. We propose to do that as a pre-trial installation, so we will collect that data to help us measure the success or otherwise of that trial.
Thank you.
That won't just be the volumes, that'll be all 7 categories of that evaluation criteria.
Thank you. And just related, because obviously the best indicator of future behaviour is past behaviour, so I was wondering, what do we have information around the before and after use of cyclists and micromobility on Argyle and Campbell Streets? What percentage improvement in bike and e-scooter use have we seen on Argyle and Campbell Streets?
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, so we do have some data similar to the sources that we mentioned before on Collins. We have similar for Campbell and Argyle. That project's obviously about to be complete. In fact, I think it was this week the final marking was completed, which is excellent. So the next stage of the project is to actually install counting equipment so we can count those users of that infrastructure, yes.
And we have baseline, we have the before shot data of Campbell and Argyle Street?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Thank you. And what expected percentage increase are we seeing in the volume of users? Let's say the Collins Street proposal as it stands goes ahead. What percentage increases are we expecting to see in the number of users down Collins Street on those 3 blocks?
Through you, Lord Mayor, yeah, it's hard to say. We are trying to measure it more holistically, so there are the 7 metrics that we're looking at measuring for success. We're also seeing this as obviously part of a network as well. So the Argyle Campbell Street, which you've referenced, is one part. As you start to connect that with Collins Street, which this will get close to doing, you'll then see an exponential growth as you start to connect different parts of this network.
Thank you. So from my perspective, and I know this is concerns also shared by Councillor Kelly and others, but we are and were concerned around the lack of Collins Street specific data, because from our perspective, to make a change of this magnitude, we need to have a really clear understanding of the baseline figures. So how many people are currently using Collins Street at various intersections, because it's self-explanatory, but people filter off from the Collins Street, from the Mole Street intersection. And so that we know what success looks like, so what the after shot would be. And I hear from the officer there that pre-trial information will be gathered, but from my perspective, I really wanted to see that data around the current usage before we voted on the actual proposal. Because what Councillor Kelly and I in particular have done is, because we heard figures bandied about on social media, like 150 bike users use Collins Street at peak time, peak being, I understand, 7 to 9 a.m. And I think that figures, and 300 cars use it during peak time, and 33% of Collins Street users are cyclists. That really seemed quite extraordinary to me. So Councillor Kelly and I, got the ladder out and we put our own camera up, we got our own data, and we will share that with elected members. We've got all the pure vision over the past couple of weeks, and we've shared with elected members the results of basically a typical weekday, the Mondays here. And this is the result of the intersection at Collins and Harrington Street, so a couple of blocks down from where the data is gathered up the top. And I do also agree with Alderman Bloomfield's comments around I don't mean to offend Bicycle Network, but around the reliability of the Super Tuesday data, because it's an event that's actively promoted. It's a known get out and ride your bike day. And the data that we have captured shows that the numbers are quite significantly lower than that. But interestingly, the numbers that we came back with, it shows a very clear, strong peak in bike cyclists moving down from South Hobart to the city between 7 and 10 a.m. really. And then it really peters off. I mean, it's got on my social media, but everybody else has this graph here. You can see the people that are flood down through those few hours on Collins Street. And then you can see there's a bit of a dip and then a slight increase in going home. But what you'll also see is that for 10 hours of the day, it's empty. Those bikes, so let's envisage that those 2 bike lanes are there. They're going to be literally empty for 10 hours a day. And for 21 of those hours, they're going to have less than 8 users. For 20 hours of those days, they're going to have 1 person toddling up the bike lane. When it was actually quite surprising, because also looking at the vision and what happens in that space, 3 a.m, 5 a.m, 11 p.m. Can I please ask for a 3-minute extension?
2 minutes.
3. Seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously.
So seeing the vision of what happens in the space around the clock, you can see that the car parks are occupied at 9:30, 10 on a Tuesday night. The people are probably at the call centre or at the gym or at the movies or at restaurants. And I remember going to the gym late myself in much earlier days, and you have a safety factor. You try to park as close as you can. And I remember walking back to my car holding my keys as a weapon, because that's what women are kind of trained to think, to be on alert. And then you see also on Saturdays and Sundays, it's pretty much barren. So when we're going to have 2 bike lanes on both sides of this street, the numbers on Saturdays and Sundays, apart from when there's a staged lobbying ride, is around 10% of what you're looking at here. I'd put $50 on there being no more than 20 bike riders across the whole day. But what this motion about is that the stats that we've got, and yes, people will argue that that's not reliable data, but we did the best to fill the data gap because it doesn't exist. The data going into Collins Street does not exist. So we've got our own, but it shows that clearways would provide a lot of benefit. It's a fair compromise. It would provide space for cyclists because the road's wider. It would remove the issue of dooring and safety, because I do care about cyclist safety big time. And then at the same time, outside of the clearway sessions, the parking's returned during business hours. And it also means that the 24/7 usage, in terms of people talking about we need to make the best use of our space, the best use of our space is not 12 hours of empty bike lanes. The best use of our space is people wanting to go to the gym, wanting to go to the movies, wanting to go to the cinema and the restaurants. So this motion is about investigating the feasibility of clearways. We had the proposal come to us around bike lanes on both sides. Given the data and given the impact, it's only fair that the council see some detailed investigation into clearways, because it's clear from our perspective, from my perspective and Councillor Kelly's, that the concept has a lot of merit and should be investigated.
The discussion, Councillor Kitsos.
Can I please ask a question through you, Chair, to Councillor Elliott? I'm just wondering, with this model of clearways, how that would work with the separated cycling infrastructure, if there were fixed bollards to protect cyclists, to separate them from cars, how that would work with them moving vehicles into that space during clearway hours?
I brought up that option with the director, and because that's what I was hoping we might be able to do too, something, you know, like how coming off the bridge, there's some temporary bollards that have to be placed up and down. But the initial feedback was that that would probably not be an option. So at the moment, this wouldn't be separated. It would be a clearway, just kind of like Macquarie Street, a clearway. But I actually would support temporary
placement of bollards, including the financial cost that comes with them in being installed, because we would have the parking revenue to help offset that. And I think that the win-win makes it worth it, because we would have safety for the cyclists when there's a valid need. Like, look how high that is. There's a valid need for more safety for Collins Street in those peak times, but there's not a valid need for it 24/7 because it just isn't used.
Councillor Lohberger was up first.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question through you to Councillor Elliott. I just wondered about the collation of the data for this graph. Can we get some information about that?
Yeah, so we'll be able to provide access to all the division. This is a typical Mondays. This was Monday the 18th of June. So just picked a day and went through the cameras, and it took hours, but I counted the number of cyclists up and down. But it's just one snapshot. And I'm sure you'll be able to pick faults in the data or say this, this and this, but we just tried to fill the data gap that was obvious to us.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I commend your efforts in obtaining a snapshot, but that doesn't compare to the 2 years of data that we can gather because we've agreed to install the bike lanes. It's what they look like that's being decided over the next period of time, whether they're separated both sides and how they are going to look into the future for 2 years. And the data that comes back after 2 years will be informative about whether the bike lanes are kept, modified or removed. And while that 1 day snapshot, so if you could do that again in 12 months and get your own snapshot, but in the meantime, the council, if and when these bike lanes are installed, we'll have counters, I imagine, which will count bikes over the whole period, through a whole year. People saying there's no parking on, you know, the street parking's full when the car parks are empty. There's a what do you call it, a dashboard that's available that shows the occupancy rates of all of our car parks. So if we've got some way of a dashboard maybe showing bike use through the city as well, and it might be that bike use is trending up, and that's what I'm hoping for. It may not be enormous over 2 years, but if it's trending in the right direction and if they're popular, then I think that'll prove that this is a good idea. However, let the trial go forward, 2 years of really good data, and then we'll see what the outcome is. So it might be low at the moment, but I don't think so. I support what data we have to date, and what data comes in the future. And I'm just through you, will there be permanent counters along Collins Street to demonstrate the usage?
Through you, Lord Mayor, yes, that's something we can do, and we like the technology we're looking at doing on Argyle and Campbell Street. We'll look to do similar on Collins Street.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Well, that's the data that'll inform me in a couple of years' time. You know, once these lanes are installed and. Yep.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just have a question through you to the appropriate director. With regards to this option of a clearway that's been mooted, is this considered by staff, and will there be a report coming to us soon with regards to this particular option?
Dow, I think it's in the report.
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, so yes, through the report that's going to come up in July, which is obviously the next sort of next presentation of this treatment. Yes, all these options, including a clearway, will be presented. We're actually doing some more work, noting that obviously the motion that we've heard and discussions with elected members. So we're taking this seriously, and we're doing further work now to re-explore why this, you know, what the validity of this option, noting all the parameters that we're trying to assess around the vision for Collins Street as well. So yes.
I have a question, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko.
I'm quite surprised because this is the first time I've heard any officer talk about a clearway. Now, was this when was the proposal for a clearway on the radar for council officers? Can someone answer that for me, please?
Mr. Noy.
Through you, Lord Mayor, I don't believe it ever was a clearway was proposed as such.
I'm confused now.
Yep.
I'm totally confused. I've got one officer saying it's part of a report coming forward. Did I take that wrong, please? I need to be clarified.
Yeah, if I can if I can clarify, I think the Clearway option has been raised during the consultation process, and it's the intent of the next report to come before council to address all of those options that have been raised as possibilities or alternatives, to provide the council with sufficient information in which to make a determination.
Okay. May I speak, Lord Mayor?
Sure.
The reason why it's been brought up is because it's been part of a number of elected members going down the street and speaking to the traders on potential options. So it's basically what's been brought to the table here is what was part of that process. In actual fact, we discussed it many times and discussed it with a lot of traders. So it was never on the agenda before. It's only been on the agenda ever since 4 elected members decided to walk the street and talk to the traders, right, about potential options. So look, I'm not being disrespectful to staff, but yes, now it's been taken on board. This is what this motion's about. This is the first time I'm advised that council officers are considering it. If it wasn't for this and what happened with the number of elected members, council officers wouldn't have been considering it. So, you know, this is an idea which can change the whole of the thinking of bikeways. Now, if we can alleviate a lot of the issues that are going to be in place for those traders there with a loss of 59 car parks, and the amount of contact I've had from those traders, and I assure you, some of them are absolutely ropeable and just waiting to see what's going to happen, because they've brought up with me already what happened in North Hobart. Now, what happened in North Hobart was that we had reports to put in car parking meters. The traders did not want those meters. And they emphasised they did not want those meters, and the traders had to go down a track, and we spent a fortune, and that's got changed. Now, I understand about this trial for 2 years. This trial for 2 years, this is after we're going to be spending a lot of money in implementing the trial. Now, I understand that the data that the 2 elected members have collated is data collected by 2 people who decided to go down a track to have a look at something. But why don't we do the data before we implement the bikeway? Because that would give us an analysis on whether or not that road is being used. But let's not go down the track of saying, okay, they're going to have a data happening on this day, make sure we got people going up and down the road. The best time to get data is when no one knows when the data is going to be collected. And that's what happened here. Look, you know, again, I'm not against bikeways. People think I'm against bikeways. I've actually spoken to people. I'm not against bikeways. What I'm against is the way they are implemented. The other day, I drove up Argyle Street and got to Bathurst Street and nearly killed myself because the road changed and the lane completely changed. And I've spoken to a number of people that think, and I've had phone calls from people going, what's happening? Now, the whole thing about it is, if we look at Collins Street and say to ourselves, how can we, if you want to talk about a trial, why don't we trial this? Why don't we trial a clearway? Clearway for drivers. Protected laneways? I understand what you think about bollards. A car parking space is 2.5 metres, correct? So it's for you? So about 2.5 metres wide? 2.1. 2.1, sorry, I was that much out. 2.1 metres wide. Putting a double line all the way down that car park on the boundary, which defines that on the inside of it is going to be a bikeway and you mark it differently, so it's a bike lane of 2.1 metres wide.
It's okay.
Could I have an extension of 2 minutes, Lord Mayor?
By Councillor Sherlock, Deputy Lord Mayor, second by Councillor
So
Elliott.
you can have a bikeway of 2.1 metres wide on one side and 2.1 metres wide on the other side in the morning and in the evening. That's a protected laneway. If people don't feel protected in 2.1 metres, there's a problem. Oh, look, you know, and the Gell report. I'm sorry. I remember arguing, debating the Gell report. That was done by a person that lives overseas. It's like trying to put bikeways in Adelaide with big wide roads. At least if we're going to get a report done on our city, let's get someone like Lee Woolley, who did the height report, who lives here, understands our city. But we got someone that lives in Siberia to do a report on Hobart. You know, like, I just cannot understand. We talk about we're going to have a trial for 2 years. Why don't we trial something? Why don't we be innovative and deliver what is called a win-win situation for the bike users and for the traders and everybody else. This is an opportunity for this council to think outside the square.
Councillor Elliott was
I just
up
have a
first.
quick question, please, because I'm genuinely really quite concerned. My question is what's going to come back to council? Is it a refinement of the 2 lanes on both sides plan, which is what I've heard the comments around the table, that the bike lanes are happening and it's refining the plan? Is what's coming back to council refining that plan, or are there other options going to be on the table, or other options being considered with a recommendation? Which
Mr.
one
Noy.
is it?
It's quite clear that the resolution is to bring back a refined design and feedback on that. And if there are any other issues relating to that or the concerns raised around other options or the like, then we are certainly happy to have those matters addressed, because they have been raised with officers and elected members, and we're proposing to provide some qualified advice in relation to those other options.
Thanks. One final question. Is it fair then to say that this motion is not redundant?
I think that's drawing the officers into the debate. I don't think it's fair. They've given their advice on the motion.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't really know where to start, frankly. I'll start with the data. I'll start with the data that's been provided by Councillor Elliott and Councillor Kelly. So that was the 18th, I think it was. You said, Councillor Elliott? Last Monday.
Maybe the 17th. Yeah,
last Monday was the coldest day we've had this year. It was 5 to 10 degrees and it was raining.
No need to speak over.
And it was raining. I rode down the Campbell Street bike lane that day with my sons to take them to daycare, and it was proper cold. But regardless, very interesting point to note in their data is that 112 cyclists enter the city, but only 26 leave. Now, I know cycling is pretty unsafe, but that's a hell of a number to be missing. Where did they go? Where did they go? If they're not
on the Winterfest.
If they came into town commuting and they didn't go home, it's bizarre data. But not only that, it is a snapshot of a single day on the coldest day of the year that we've had so far. And the data that officers, who again I have great faith in, have provided us, tell us that seasonally adjusted numbers are much higher than that and reflect the 150 users in peak between 7 and 9 compared to 300 cars, which represents 1/3 of the wheeled transport user group. Right, so that's the data. I think a snapshot's fine. I applaud you for going out and making the effort, but it's not particularly valid data. On to clearways. Where to start with clearways? What really frustrates me with any kind of conversation about bikeways is that we would never apply the same logic to a road for a car. Oh my God, we're going to put bike lanes in on both sides of the road. That means you can go both into the city and out of the city on the same road. What a wild concept. Imagine if we only let cars go one way and not back the other. And imagine if lanes, like, you provide protected infrastructure so that you can get more women riding, more older people riding. But if you just create a clearway, I can assure you that drivers will park in it, because drivers are already parking in the clearways, not just the clearways, they're parking in the green painted bike lanes. So they will not be effective. Clearways are not an effective tool. And not only that, the key thing that so many of you are missing is that this is enabling infrastructure. This is not, Councillor Elliott said, the best indicator of future behaviour is previous behaviour. It's not. It's not, because we've had a stepwise change in the infrastructure provided. Imagine, for example, if suddenly you could walk to work with a tunnel around you that kept you warm, it kept you dry. I think a lot more people would suddenly walk to work. This is similar for cyclists. This is about keeping cyclists safe and showing them that this piece of road is for them. And all the questions around the data, the ABS produced a number that said that South Hobart has the 3rd highest number of commuters as a percentage of any suburb in the country, and we won't give them 3 blocks of bike lane. Now, the plans that are being developed provide that supporting infrastructure, that enabling infrastructure to get more people on their bikes. Every single South Hobartian that doesn't take the car is one less car on Macquarie Street in peak. Now, I think that the other component that I need to address is that it's not just been the Conservatives that have been walking Collins Street. I've spent 3 days on Collins Street talking to businesses, and I have not heard the hysteria that I am hearing secondhand from other members here. When I sit down and I talk to business owners about their concerns, and we talk about ways that we could alleviate those concerns, they are generally quite open to the trial, seeing what it will do to Collins Street, because they recognise that it is in fact a place-making exercise. It's about increasing footfall on their street for more visibility, for more shoppers passing by and seeing something in the window that they might like to buy. I'll ask for an extension of 2 minutes, Lord Mayor.
Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried
And so much of the rhetoric around this Collins Street intervention is about small business. But it's not actually about small business. I'd ask you to look at yourselves, because all you're talking about is retail. Small business is architecture, small business is cafes, small business is conference companies. These are all small businesses. And guess what? Their employees ride to work. It is supporting those businesses, and I've spoken to a number of those businesses and business owners who are very supportive of it. And not only that, the plan also provides opportunity for 2 parklets to provide further support and opportunity to hospitality venues on Collins Street. So I don't think this is about small business at all. I think that is a complete misnomer. I think it's about a specific type of retail, and I have seen people campaigning for small businesses actively telling people not to go to cafes who are supportive of this. So if you're a small business advocate and you're deliberately telling people not to go to a particular small business because it doesn't suit your agenda, you are not a small business advocate at all. So I can't support this. We're going to go and keep pushing on and producing the best result for South Hobart, for Collins Street and for all of Hobart, and we're going to do it with courage, just like the Yarngell report saw for us.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, let's be real. This motion is, I think, trying to seek a sensible midpoint here. We've already heard from officers that this has been raised in feedback to them. So look, I applaud the motion being brought forward. I think sometimes, you know, the good result is not necessarily the perfect result everyone wants. You know, if there is a much higher usage at a certain point in the day, it is appropriate to explore the option of, well, how do we alleviate that part of the day? And look, Councillor Purcell has made a really good point. South Hobart already has the highest usage of bicycle riding. We've all seen that beautiful reporting. You know, that there isn't then this barrier. It's not with disabling infrastructure. They're already enabled. They've got the highest in the whole state. You know, and then we can look at, well, when are they using it? They're using it first thing in the morning. It's a commuter path. So, okay, well, let's make that section safer. I fear we are running down the path of causing more harm. We did it, we've heard it happened in North Hobart. We're talking about small businesses. I've had a dentist on that street reach out to me, fuming. You know, some of our clients come from nursing homes. They can't go park in a multi-storey and walk 500 metres and come down to the dentist. They've just had a procedure done, they're coming out. They need the ability to get dropped off and get picked up there. This is going to potentially impact much more than just the retailers or just the thing. There are established businesses on there, but established there in the knowledge of what that street enables. Taking out a whole bunch of car parks does have an impact. Putting in parking meters where they weren't previously there does have an impact. Some of these changes, we need to be very careful. And look, if at the end of the day we get a lot of information about peak usage and bicycle, we can then go, how do we help those people and how do we make it safer? You know, that's fine, but my fear is we've come up with a solution, now we're trying to justify the problem. You know, when I hear that bicycle usage in South Hobart is incredibly high, I think, well, great, enough people there are safe enough and good enough. When I hear there's going to be a clearway put in on Macquarie Street, great, that will assist those people. You know, we need to be very careful, and I think what's before us is a sensible step to explore, and I know the officers listening in as we're having this debate. But, you know, that is one of the main streets, one of the main shopping streets, a central business district street. It has a lot of businesses on it. A lot of these businesses, I mean, I've heard from one of the tour buses saying, well, this is a disaster, that's one of our main routes we go down. You know, how are we going to operate and support tourism businesses? So, look, I appreciate that we're sort of having the debate before debate, because this will come back no doubt in July. But, you know, we need to be very careful as a council for the city, you know, at first sort of do no harm, and if there are other ways of helping people who commute by bicycle, but then potentially not causing issues and damage for others, you know, I think maybe we do need to look for the good outcome, not the perfect outcome. And it might not necessarily be one that a clearway might not be my preferred outcome, but maybe that is a good outcome to have. So, look, I think having this motion, we've heard it's going to sort of be explored anyway, because that's what the feedback has been. And so, look, I just think it's appropriate. And look, you know, no one gets up and decides to put a camera up because it's a fun activity to do. There is clearly a lot of concern in the community by some sectors, and there's also clearly, can I say, a lot of support from some sectors. I've received a huge amount of correspondence from people who are fundamentally okay with having this go in. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, if we're making a change to organisations, business users of Collins Street, we need to be very careful not to damage the users, businesses and operators on Collins Street. So, look, I think this motion is sensible. I think this motion is trying to come up with a good solution. And look, it may not be the perfect solution for most people, but maybe that's a good solution at the end of the day. So I support the motion.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have a question through you before I speak, and the question is, the Clearway proposal, was that presented to us before, or this has come about because of the community members and some elected members bringing this?
Mr. Noy.
Yes. No, look, Clearway has not been presented to council previously. The intent is to, it has certainly been raised by members of the community as an alternative, and it's the intent of the officers to address those concerns in the response to those matters when we come back at the next available council meeting.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Now, I just want to make 4 points. Point number 1, I think the intention and bringing this motion, again, I commend. I commend the opinions and the arguments that's been presented. Point number 1 for me is this, that the community out there have expressed their concerns. We will never be able to please everybody. The community will be divided, and it will be like that on this particular matter, I think. But the members who have brought this to us, the elected members, they have brought this motion because there are members of community who have expressed concerns to them with regards to the business. And then I take that on board. Point number 2, with regards to supporting this motion to bring the data to endorse this motion, I question the data, that's all. It may have all the good intentions, but as you know, methodology in collecting the data is very important. And so I don't know what methodology was used, etc., and therefore I'm having question with regards to that. However, I think the concept, point number 2 of Clearway, is a very good concept. I have a clear answer from the director that this concept wasn't presented to us, but it came in the process of consultation with the community members, and I think it's a valid one for us to look at, and I would support that. Point number 3 is this, that when I read the administration response, they have clearly stated that this option will be taken into account. The results will come to us next month, it's around the corner, and I'll be able to make the decision based on the data they will present to us. So just in a matter of a month, I would wait for the data from council staff, and then hopefully I'll be in a position to make the decision then. Thank you.
Alderman Bloomfield.
I've got a few points to make. One of them is it's all very well to criticise the elected members who chose to put up a camera and check out the numbers. They did that because there wasn't an alternative source of truth available for us to know what was done or not done. So much for following the Traffic Commissioner guidelines, because it's not done. And as far as then suggesting that the data must be inaccurate because after all a whole heap of people came down in the morning and not very many went home, wouldn't it be logical to suggest it's because they chose an alternative route? Just maybe there's a better slope somewhere, they don't have to pedal uphill so much. Wouldn't that be logical? It's not appropriate to suggest the data is inaccurate. It's actually recorded, kept. I have no doubt that if you want to interrogate, every single hour would be available to you.
Bloomfield, speak, please.
And it's certainly more valid than the bicycle network data, because no one knew this stuff was coming out. No one knew, which meant that no one could go, oh, you beaut, we're going to be doing some exercise on the bike today because we know everyone's watching us. No, they didn't know. They couldn't be there to bump the numbers. So that's good data research. It's provable and it has integrity. So the other things that I have a problem with is the whole point about imagining. I like to imagine too. Imagine being a small business owner in Collins Street. You have a lease. Leases typically are 5 to 10 years. Imagine that, 5 to 10 years of commitment to that street. And lo and behold, you are now told with no choice, no voice, you're going to be having a bike lane in front. Now, bike lanes are great, except that this is like a highway because there's nowhere anyone gets to stop. I even asked, I said, do we have anywhere that you're going to put in some parks for bike parks? Because when I tried to use my e-scooter in North Hobart, I couldn't because there was nowhere safe to park my e-scooter so I could actually engage with North Hobart. So that stayed back at the office and I used a car where I could safely park and go out and do the work I had to do. So you know what happens with businesses when we put in a bypass, which is what this is. It's a bypass, it's a highway, no stops. It kills small businesses. You think about all those places like Oatlands used to have people come through, Bothwell used to have people come through. As soon as they put the big highway in and took the bypass away from these little guys, those towns suffered. So that's effectively what we're planning for. Imagine being a small business in Collins Street, knowing that you don't get a choice to say no, you don't get much of a voice to say, can you please alter this? And in fact, when we did talk to people, yeah, there were a couple who liked it. There was 6. We found 6 businesses. Congratulations. And yeah, they were, there was a coffee shop and there was an architect and there's bits and pieces like that. That's fine. They're absolutely entitled to their view. But when they're the minority and everyone else is going to suffer, I think those families deserve the right to a quiet income as like any other family in Hobart. They employ staff, they have homes and mortgages, that this strips them. And I feel that when we plan for everyone. We don't just plan because we think it's really cool to whack in some extra bike lanes. We have to do it with sensitivity. And this has no sensitivity at all. We need to make sure that when we put these things through, that we account. That's the whole reason we have council. That's the whole reason we actually talk to people. And that doesn't even count the conversations that people have had with elected members. I will point out that when you do decide to converse with the members of public, especially if you're trying to go through and ask what people think, you must announce that you are an elected member. You must. Because I did actually have people comment on people coming through and asking, and they thought they were staff members, and we were having to work out, was it a staff member, was it an elected member? That's really inappropriate too. So please, if you want to imagine it for everyone and not just a few lucky souls.
Councillor Kitsos.
Look, my head is spinning tonight with the amount of discussion about data that we have had. Okay, we've heard about all sorts of data. We've heard about data from cameras, which would have caught me on, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, so I'm coming to terms with people putting up cameras for public observation. But to me, we've got qualitative data, we've got quantitative data. They're the types of data that we have in our research. That's what we fall back on with academic research standards. And the data that we collect is based on the research question. It has to be. The question comes first, the hypothesis, the scientific reasoning for what it is that you're trying to study comes first. And without that, and without the protocol to back that up, this is cherry-picking data to suit both sides of the argument and has absolutely no standing to whether or not we consider a clear way. Tonight we've heard numerous sayings bantered around. We've had past performance doesn't predict future use in planning. We've had build it and they will come in the pickleball conversation. We've had past performance does indicate future use. So which one is it? What does inform what our future plan looks like? To me, if you were going to do this as a research trial, you have to build it and test it. Now we know that there are high numbers of bicycle commuters that line with working hours. It's a no-brainer. That's because people want to do it. They're the adults, they're the people of working age that commute into the business district to work. But the people who would use it inside those hours are not safe. You know, families with children, older retirees don't ride into the city in those times because the infrastructure is simply not there. Now, for me, I draw back on research again. We've got anecdotal evidence, again, from both sides. We've got 6 businesses for it. Out of how many? Where's the statistical significance here with what it is that you're talking about? But for me, the evidence is clear with cycleways that the gold standard of a protected cycle infrastructure is that it has to have separation between the vehicles and the lane. And without that, you're not guaranteed to be safe. You don't have the clearance for the dooring issues, and you don't have the guaranteed behaviour of the cars in the city that they won't park in your lane. Believe me, every day I ride, there is a car in the lane. Which begs the question, can they not actually follow the line markings, or is this actually a choice to park in the cycleway? Because it's very clearly marked, as Alderman Zuko pointed out. So to me, a clearway is a compromise. It's not going to allow us to collect the data that shows that people will in fact come if we build it, because they won't have that chance to use it during those less than peak hour times. And without those permanent separations, you're not testing what your research question is, which is, if we build safe separated cycleways, will we get an increase in commuters to this part of the city? So I think this has to be a tactical trial, and when we have the evidence, then we can look at the results.
Councillor, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I was actually going to vote for this motion tonight, especially after hearing Alderman Zuko's comments that this was as the direct result of elected member consultation. Turns out it actually wasn't, which I just
point of
heard
order,
from...
Lord Mayor. Point of order.
What's the point of order, Alderman?
I believe I've been accused of misrepresentation on the basis that I was stated that Councillor Sherlock was going to vote on it based on what I said, but then it wasn't. That's calling me a liar.
No, I won't accept that point of order. Councillor Sherlock, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. And so to further clarify, the reason why I now hold that new position is because from the information I've just received from our council officers that the Clearway information came out as a result of consultation with the community. So it begs the question, and just through you, Chair, to the relevant director, can you tell me when is the stakeholder and engagement report coming? Is that what's coming in July?
Mr. Noy.
Lord Mayor, yeah, look, that's our intention, subject to finalising the report, of course, in that time frame.
Right. Thank you for that. Yeah, well, you know, I think as the information has just been provided and as the information's just there in the administrative advice, it seems like perhaps then there's a bit of appropriation of council officer work. And why I say it's appropriation is because if it was already part of the community consultation, if it was already it's going to come to us as a result of feedback that you've received, it's a month away. It's going to come to us in July. That's what I'm hearing and that's what I'm interpreting. So I think I'll just with regards to this motion, actually quote Councillor Coates. It will do no harm. It will do no harm to say no to this motion because it will come back to us in July. It will be a good outcome, not a perfect outcome. And the good outcome will be this, that we'll have more time, 1 month, for this to come back.
Point of order, Lord Mayor. I think I'm being a little bit misrepresented in my previous comments. I didn't relate to this.
Please continue, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you. And perhaps it is then, so that we have a longer period of time to do this consultation and the stakeholder engagement report. Perhaps another quote is, perhaps that's a good outcome. Maybe not a perfect outcome, but it'll be something that will come back to us at council and we'll be able to make more of an informed decision. So thank you very much.
Any further discussion? I'm not going to say anything because I think everything's pretty much been said, but I did have a question about data. Do we have data on how many cars that travel down Collins Street stop in Collins Street?
No, not directly because we don't have automatic number plate recognition.
Okay.
We do have volumes of vehicles travelling in each block. We do have a number of vehicles turning each block, and we do have the number of vehicles parking in each block.
And do we have data about, so we don't actually know how many cars stop in Collins Street. Do we, so do we know how long cars stay when they do stop in Collins Street?
Yes, we do through sensor data. Yeah, we can sort of, and obviously through controls as well. So,
and is all of that? Are we going to get all of that? I mean, you know, like and I guess my third question is: do we know how much they shop when they are stopped in Collins Street?
It's all hard to obviously build together. We are trying to build a bit of a piece that will be presented in July. Some of that, okay. Yes.
And so will that separate car shoppers from pedestrian shoppers from bike shoppers?
Yes, that data will. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I just think there are so many multiples of data we can collect about, you know, the what ifs. What if that car park was there? What if that car does stop? What if that bike does stop? What if that bike buys? I mean, honestly, we will not get to the absolute bottom of all of this through just data. We have to go to some basic principles also about providing choice for people. And when you look at how much space and parking that is available for cars in our city, this is not a group of transport, people in a particular form of transport that are being hardly done by. There is plenty of facilities and support and space provided. And so, I'm just concerned that we are getting so bamboozled by data, and we will not get every single bit of data that we could all potentially want. And I don't know all those cars are going to be good for business. I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether they, or the pedestrians, or the tourists from the hotels around. I don't know. It's going to be very hard to make those decisions. But there's some other big principles that we are also having to consider. Not just shops and who buys more bikes, pedestrians, cars, but also we have to consider safety, and we have to consider having a modern city like every other capital city that is putting in these facilities, because we know that the more choices we provide, the less congested city we have, which is a more productive city, which is a more welcoming city, a more efficient city. So there's a whole range of options that we will need to consider, and I just think that we're going to get some good data. It sounds like I'm going to be really interested to see this data, but we're not necessarily going to get every single answer, and we have to consider a whole range of policy issues as well. Okay, I'll put the motion.
Can I stand up, please?
You can if you like. Yep.
So the facts are bike clearways work. They're used in every state in Australia apart from Western Australia. They're used overseas. There is nothing wrong with considering a bike clearway. I just don't get it tonight. Oh, and let's trial this for 2 years. Bugger the small business. We'll go back and after it's potentially wreck them, look them in the eyes and say, oh, sorry, we weren't prepared to give something as a bit of a compromise go. We're just going to go straight out. I notice those comments come from people who don't actively be involved in small business. It's very easy to say that sort of thing. There is no data that it's beyond coming down Mole Street where bikes go 3 and 4 different ways. There is nothing down the intersection that Councillor Elliott and I took. I don't know what happened to the bikes going back, but if you want to have a look at the video on the day that we collected it, you're more than welcome. The video doesn't lie. By the way, I would suggest they went other routes. So how can anyone here tonight not support this? And I'll read it again to you, that's the first line, that a report be provided to investigate the feasibility of time clearways. Simple as that. We're just investigating. I'm trying here, and I'm going to make an admission here, I'm going to own up to something. It was me who came up to this clearway idea. I phoned the director, Neil Noy. I said to him, Neil, have you thought about this? The answer was no. It was me who came up with it. I did the research, I came up with it. So there you go. So in summary, let's just see here tonight, how can you not support this? Let's just see the names of the people and let's just see how can the public, if nothing else, for the sake of the public out there, to let them know that we are concerned and yes, we are going to confirm that we do it, how can you not support this motion tonight? Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Zuko, Elliott, Coates, Bloomfield, Kelly, and the noes. Dutta, Passelt, Kitsos, Lohberger, Harvey, the deputy, and the mayor.
Okay, that's lost. Move on now to item 26, which is, would someone like to move the responses to questions without notice? Councillor Kelly, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. We now have item 27, which is questions without notice. Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Through you to the appropriate director, and I'll forward this later. Can the planning staff please outline what the planning process is for a commercial development in a national park? If, for example, Kunyani Mount Wellington was made a national park, would the Hobart City Council still be the planning authority for any proposals put forward in the park? If Kunyani Mount Wellington was declared a national park, what process would be required to transfer the land to a new tenure, and would there be a need for a new planning provisions developed to apply to the park? Thank you. I'll forward that later.
I have a question, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko.
Yes, could the CEO please investigate that if Kunani Mount Wellington was made a national park, what the cost savings would be to the Hobart City Council?
Councillor Elliott.
Can the council please have some clarity on the distinction between the City of Hobart and the Hobart City Council as standalone entities? Or my understanding is one might be branding. Can we have some clarity on City of Hobart versus Hobart City Council as entities?
Well, the distinction really is, I don't think at law there is a distinction. I mean, so technically we're the Hobart City Council. That is what our technical title at law is. We refer to ourselves as the City of Hobart. So that is us as an organisation. So does that answer your question?
My question perfectly. Thank you.
Further, any questions, Councillor Coles?
Thank you. Look, I flagged this one previously with management in an email, but just to put it formally on. So, what is the consultancy cost for the development of a new Aboriginal Commitment Action Plan? And the second one was, could Council please be provided with reporting produced as part of the 2020 to 2022 Aboriginal Commitment Action Plan, including a summary of which action items were finalised, which ones were part complete and which ones were not completed?
Can please provide your questions in writing, just makes it easier for the note takers.
Coincidentally, I can provide the answer to one of Councillor Coates' questions if you like, just around the Aboriginal Action.
I think Councillor Coates might like it in writing.
Question
58,000. Coincidentally, I sent it to you.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, just I had a question just with regards to what you were just saying with the, sorry, that just piqued my interest about the distinction between the entity aspect. So the Hobart, could you just clarify, is the Hobart City Council the elected members, and is the City of Hobart the organisation, or is it the other way around?
Difference.
No difference.
All right, I'll have a crack at this one.
Yeah.
So look, in terms of officers under the Local Government Act, I think we're all part of the one big family. It's the one legal entity. If ever there was a second part to it that's a legal fiction, if you will, it's the ABN trading component of council under the Corporations Act from the Commonwealth, which you need to give effect to the legislative powers, if you will, of the council, so we can trade, so we can hire consultants, pay bills, all that sort of thing. But when it's all boiled down, it is the one legal entity.
I've got a question. Is it, can we get written clarification about whether it is lawful to collect video data of people without permission or without public notices being made available about the presence of video cameras?
I can actually answer that one in the room if you'd like, Lord Mayor. There's been some High Court commentary on that. There's you're essentially fair game if you're in public. I don't know where the camera was, who put it up, but if you're in public, you can be filmed. Consent's not required. There are exceptions to that if you're a minor, for example. But if you're an adult in a public space, then you can be filmed, yes.
And what about if you are a minor and you're captured? Are there any rules around sort of privacy and those sort of things?
In generalisations, yes, you would need consent of the legal guardian to film a minor.
So if people are in possession of video data, they shouldn't necessarily be, that might include minors, they need to be careful about offering people being able to view that?
I haven't viewed the data that we're talking about.
Hypothetically.
But look, hypothetically, if it had footage of minors in it and the author, if you will, or the photographer didn't have the consent of a legal guardian, I'd advise against sharing it publicly.
Publicly sharing.
Yeah.
Publicly sharing.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? There being none, we will now move into the closed portion of the meeting. If someone would like to move a motion. Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye.